Geologists who got a closer view of the volcano flying right into the crater called the scene spooky and scary. Other scientists reported new rumblings from the mountain today. They aren't sure what that portends.
The 1980 Mount St. Helens volcanic eruption was the deadliest in U.S. history.
We had a major eruption occurring at 8:32 approximately.
The first to occur in the era of live television.
The northwest flank of the mountain seems to be gone.
Never before had the world witnessed a volcano's destructive power in real time. But while a media event, it was also an unprecedented opportunity for scientists. The 1980 eruption was the first to be thoroughly monitored, with a variety of geophysical instruments observing and measuring the processes that produced such an explosive fury.
845.
Since then, scientists have kept a close eye on the Yellowstone caldera, watching for unusual activity. Geophysicist David Menson is trying to decipher strange signals coming from Yellowstone Lake. These signals are picked up by instruments buried under the lake, far beneath the Earth's crust. Menson and his team couldn't believe the readings they got. Mysterious messages from the deep.
We thought the instrument was malfunctioning until we noticed that it was showing up on all the instruments simultaneously.
They realized the lake was making waves, undetectable to the eye, but registering on the instruments. Water moving back and forth like water displaced in a bathtub.
This water, this big weight of water going back and forth is essentially pushing down on the crust on top of the caldera, and it's reacting differently because the layer underneath is more like a fluid than it is a solid. And we don't understand what's forcing this to happen.
And it's not just the water making waves. The ground itself is moving. Beginning in 2004, scientists discovered a quarter of the Yellowstone caldera was rising nearly 3 inches a year, right over the magma chamber.
It was about 25 centimeters over that entire 4 to 6 year period.
Then in 2010, the Earth slowly started going back down. No one's quite sure what's causing this rise and fall.
People still argue about exactly what it means.
The meaning of these geologic clues may be up for debate, but there's little doubt about the economic costs of a Yellowstone super eruption. According to FEMA, the estimated economic losses in the U.S. could run up to $3 trillion. The effects on the world economy would be equally catastrophic if a global volcanic winter resulted.
So, are we prepared for this event? Probably not.
While there's no way to prevent a super eruption, there may be ways to mitigate its impact if there are early warning signs.
It's feasible to keep everybody out of the park. Not an easy thing to do, but that's something they can plan for.
That's a big evacuation plan. And certainly things are going to go wrong. People are going to be killed in car accidents, for example, in the rush to get away from the volcano.
For people living in zones further away from the eruption, survival would depend on preparing for the worst. But how bad would the worst be?
I would say that the example of Japan has a number of very important lessons for us. They were not prepared for it. The earthquake was bigger, the tsunami was bigger. Based on the historic earthquake activity, they thought they really had a pretty good understanding of how things moved. And when they got a 9, the overwhelming majority of seismologist engineers were really, really surprised. We really do have to consider that the event may exceed our parameters.
In America, Hurricane Katrina revealed how vulnerable people and property are in the face of massive natural disasters. while evacuation for a hurricane may move people away from impact zones for a period of days or a week, a supereruption's destructive power would be far greater and last far longer. For individuals to survive a supereruption, it may take a new mindset.
Developing a culture of preparedness. It's not paranoia. It's not constantly thinking that something's going to happen. But simple things like having the ability to last on your own for a week, having food and supplies, having a kit in your car.
For a community to survive a supereruption, it requires planning and preparedness on a vast scale, and begins with stockpiling the essentials, starting with water.
Just what we keep in stock is enough to purify about 150 million liters of clean drinking water. You don't get folks clean water, people die. And it's simple as that.
The Canadian charity Global Medic has responded to 60 natural disasters in 35 different countries around the world.
And one thing I can tell you as a uniform rule is no one's prepared enough. You and your family should be stockpiled for about 3 days, because that's probably what it's going to take the rest of our society to come and provide you with supplemental aid.
There's the likelihood that food security will become a concern once initial supplies run out.
Food's tough to distribute at any time. I think back to Haiti, where we had to use UN troops to roll down the streets just to protect our convoys of food, just so we could get them into community centers of makeshift cities.
Some scientists advocate governments taking measures now to guard against eventual shortages.
One of the things you might want to do if you're waiting for a supervolcanic eruption is to be able to store enough food to get you through the 5 or 6 years when there's going to be no growing season. But when the yields are high, we only have about 2 months worth of grain in storage in the United States. So we really have to make a major effort to stockpile enough foods and other materials.
The challenge may seem insurmountable, the consequences inevitable. But with a disaster so great looming in the future, the question becomes, when will it happen?
When the unspeakable happen.
This was a life and death situation. We were going to blow it up.
The unthinkable was the only hope.
The airplane's going to go down. It's just a matter of where.
Air disasters, tomorrow at 8.
As scientists learn more about how volcanoes behave, they search for clues that may help pinpoint the next Yellowstone supereruption. But forecasting when it will happen is tricky business.
Some volcanoes erupt with more regularity and are a little bit easier to predict, and some aren't. And Yellowstone, it's a dynamic system, and so a dynamic system like that is difficult to predict.
We know a major eruption will occur in the future, but exactly when, we don't know.
I do know that there will be volcanic eruptions again at Yellowstone. I don't think they're very likely to happen within my lifetime.
Scientists agree. It's hard to predict the timing of Yellowstone's next major eruption.
So will that be in our lifetime, our children's lifetime, our grandchildren's? We can't say for sure because we've never experienced in historic times an eruption that big.
When the eruption comes, scientists agree there will be warning signs, weeks, if not months in advance.
We're going to see at least 6 weeks of reawakening. Increased earthquake activity, increased small-scale steam eruptions, ground swelling, gas emissions, because that's certainly what we saw in the case of St. Helens and Pinatubo.
But has the reawakening begun?
The difficult thing is always going to be understanding how big is this going to be, how big can it get, and that's not something that we really have that much experience with because we haven't had any eruptions in historic time that are of that kind of scale.
there's good reason why scientists and officials are hesitant to sound the alarm.
When you start to make comments about potential eruptions or indeed potential earthquakes, local administrative bodies get very, very upset. Real estate values drop, tourism decreases. I mean, you have real issues there.
I don't make the decisions to evacuate. I just tell the managers, here are the possibilities and here's the likelihood. It's up to you.
But what happens when scientists fail to warn the public? In 2009, in L'Aquila, Italy, a series of earthquake swarms were recorded in the months before a 6.3 earthquake shook the city. No evacuation was ordered. More than 300 people were killed. 6 seismologists and a government official were charged with manslaughter for failing to warn people about the coming earthquake.
We don't know enough about the warning signs of an impending eruption to be able to say, okay, now is the time to evacuate. If you make a mistake and the volcano doesn't go off, then you've moved hundreds of thousands of people for no reason whatsoever. So politically, it might be a problem of who is going to make the call, the governor, the president, the local mayors, who's going to make the call to begin to evacuate.
It's a tough call to make, because even if you know the date, how do you evacuate most of the United States west of the Mississippi?
I always worry about how much error we have in our data. What's the variability in an answer? I could answer you, I could say 50% chance in 10 days. But what if I'm off by 1,000%?
In my view, there will be another super eruption from Yellowstone, but it's almost certainly not going to happen for many thousands of years.
People want to put their heads in the sand. They don't want to think about these super eruptions happening again. And we know for sure that that volcano is going to go off.
Today, Yellowstone's Old Faithful erupts predictably every 90 minutes or so. But as for exactly when Yellowstone will unleash its inevitable catastrophic fury, whether tomorrow or many thousands of years from now, the answer lies buried deep within the earth.